Today's topic is ZK Bootstrap Helper, easy CSS utility and responsive grids for your ZK page. Let's go and just jump into a short introduction. I'm going to be talking about ZK a little bit, but also about Bootstrap. Keep in mind that ZK and Bootstrap are two different frameworks. That doesn't mean they can't be used in the same page together with great effect. Just that my center of expertise is more located on the ZK side. So I'm going to start by talking about the wrapper, the relationship between ZK and the wrapper, and how to install it into a ZK project. But with that said, we're going to then go into some Bootstrap example and the type of things you can easily add to a ZK page to make it nicer. Okay, so without more wait, let's just jump into it. And before we get into the meat of the topic, as usual, I'll remind you, if you have any question, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be trying to look at the chat every so often. If the question is interesting, relevant, or has a good reason to be answered right now, I might address it while we are on the specific topic. If it's a general question or something that is better kept for Q&A, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So if it's not answered immediately, don't worry, I'll be coming back to it at the end of the session. Okay, so first, what is the ZK Bootstrap helper? The ZK Bootstrap helper is a wrapper for the Bootstrap webjar. Now, when I say that, the next question has to be, what is the Bootstrap webjar? And the Bootstrap webjar, very simply, it's a webjar that contains an already built Bootstrap client-side framework. And now when I say that, you have one more question. What is a webjar? Maybe, if you've never encountered the term. A webjar, very simply, is a jar file, which can be used in your Java projects, especially in your servlet-based project, like your ZK application. That can be distributed using Java dependency management. So it can go into Maven, it can go into your local repository if you have a local repository. And it contains primarily client-side content. So JavaScript, CSS, that kind of good stuff. It does not specifically contain, it can contain some, but it's not its core, Java content. The Java content that might be in there usually is just version handling or that kind of thing. It doesn't add Java behavior or API to your project. What is it used for? In this case, the Bootstrap webjar is used to simply add an already built Bootstrap into a web project so that you don't have to manually go download and build a Bootstrap framework, put it into your resource folder, and then go and map it to your page. If you add the webjar, you already have all of those things pre-processed for you. And the only thing you have to do is add the URL to your page in order to just use Bootstrap in your page. Now, why make a ZK wrapper for the webjar? First of all, what is it? Is it a jar that contains a jar? No, we're using dependency management. It's a jar that is depending on the Bootstrap webjar itself and just adds a little bit of extra coding sugar to make it seamless to integrate in a ZK page. We're talking about automatically wiring it into your theme, automatically putting those resources into your page, and have the ability to load and handle the different parts of the framework that you might want to see in your ZOL files. What does that look like in practice? And first, what is Bootstrap 5? Because I've been talking about Bootstrap like everyone knows what it is. I assume most of you have at least some familiarity with the term if you work with client-side framework. Bootstrap 5, what is it? It is a free client-side framework, front-end framework, that help you make a web page easily, quickly, and with some extra flair. It's a toolbox. You can use it for styling, for layouting. The full Bootstrap framework has more bits and bobs. There are Bootstrap components that are already decorated that you can use for specific use case. But for our purpose, we're more interested in the layouting and the mix and match CSS classes aspect. That doesn't mean you can't use the rest. Just for what we're going to do today, we're more interested in that side of things. Okay. And one thing that I personally use Bootstrap for, because I find it very convenient, is the responsive design support. If you're familiar with the responsive design integration into any page, you might know already that designing everything from the ground up can be time consuming. You have to make a lot of groundwork to put your responsive breakpoint, to define your responsive sizes, all of that kind of thing. Bootstrap has a responsive design support that already define the different responsive steps and can be enabled just with simple CSS classes. So I personally find that very convenient. So what are we going to use it in ZK? As I just said, the easy responsive layout. And also, if you're going to use the theme support, you can preset color, preset styles, and have them apply in the same way, just using CSS classes in your page. All right. With that said, how do we install the Bootstrap helper and by extension, the Bootstrap webjar into a ZK project? If you've paid attention, you've heard me mention the fact that this is a jar file and therefore a Maven dependency. The Bootstrap webjar itself is available on Maven Central, so all of your project can already just resolve it natively without having to go through the ZK Bootstrap helper. And the ZK Bootstrap helper itself is located in our public repository. So if you already have the ZK community edition, the free repository declared in your project, you can simply add the webjar to your project by adding its dependency, which is a simple Maven dependency. If you're using Gradle, you can use the dependency resolution in Gradle to resolve it in the same way, because Gradle can resolve from Maven repositories, all the same, no difference there. I'm not going to go into a lot more detail on how Maven work. This is not a Maven talk, and I assume if you've already used the POM file, you probably have a good idea where those things go. All right. So now that we have included the library into our project, we can configure it. By default, the ZK Bootstrap helper can be used without any extra configuration. It will install in every page the Bootstrap grid and the Bootstrap utilities file. Now, that might not be what you want, so you have the option to configure it. The option to configure it first is by selecting which Bootstrap packages you're going to want to include into your page. By default, the Bootstrap jar come with three utilities. The first one is the Bootstrap grid. You heard me talk already about responsive grid and how Bootstrap come with pre-built responsive sizes, columns, that kind of thing. This is all included in that package. You have the utilities. Utilities is a diverse package. It contains color support, background support, borders, visibility. There's quite a lot of things in there. I'm going to go and show you a few of them at the end of the talk. So stay tuned for that, but just remember that it's located here. And then you have the reboot package. The reboot package is a normalizing package. It essentially removes browser differences and create a level playing field between browsers. So if you want a page that is going to look exactly the same when you're looking at it on Chrome on Windows or on Firefox on Linux, or on Safari on your Mac, having the reboot package will already pre-normalize all your page. To note, ZK does something like that. We have a norm CSS DSP also included in ZK, which has the same function, but the reboot package is specifically designed to work with the Bootstrap classes. So whether you want it or not will depend on your design choices, but you can turn it on or turn it off from here. When you use the customized package selection, you will first declare the Bootstrap property to custom, and then add this list of custom packages. Every item that you put in that list is going to be loaded. Every item that you do not put in that list is going to not be loaded automatically in all of your page. Okay. And lastly, the last option that you may want is to include the ZK helper for Bootstrap, but not automatically wire them. There are use cases where you would want to do that. So for example, if you have a complex application with a internal section that does not use Bootstrap and an external section that needs to use Bootstrap, you may want to do the seam resolution manually, in which case you can deactivate the automatic seam resolution by putting the Bootstrap property to none. All right, let's take a look at an actual project and see how that works. So this is a very simple demonstration project that you should be able to see on screen at the moment. Yes, screen sharing is working as intended. You'll see here that I have a simple Bootstrap helper demo project. The code for that demo and the slide and everything, as usual, are going to be available to everyone at the end of the talk. So don't bother taking a screenshot. All of that is going to be provided. Okay, we have in our dependencies here the org zcos zkforge Bootstrap helper dependency. We're using Bootstrap 5.1.0, and if we look at the dependency hierarchy here, you can see that our Bootstrap helper is loading internally the Bootstrap dependency. Bootstrap itself is loading popper.js because that's part of Bootstrap. As usual, you can do all of that control in Maven. You can do dependency management, version control, all of the good stuff. And yeah, simple dependency management. As for configuration, you can see here we have our zk.xml, which contain our library properties. In this case, I've made a zk.xml configuration that contains the custom version of the settings, and I am loading all of the utilities. I'm loading the grid, the utilities, and the reboot package. If I wanted to load only grid and reboot, for example, and I don't care about the utilities, I could simply just not put this entry in the list, and we would be good to go. If I wanted to load the grid and the utilities but not reboot, I could simply just not configure the package, because that's the default configuration if you don't put anything in your zk.xml. All right. Now that you have a good idea of how those things are configured, let's go back and take a look at the included content. Because I've told you how to install it, now let's see what we can do with it. And I think that's the most interesting part. If you're already familiar with Bootstrap, if you already know what a responsive grid is, if you've already applied a BG primary into your page, you might hear me talk about things you've heard before, but I'll try to keep it interesting anyway. Okay, so responsive grid. What is responsive design? First, if you've never heard the term, where have you been for the last 5 years or so, or even a little bit longer than that? Responsive design is creating a design that is going to look nice on any single size of screen that your user are going to be consuming it, whether they're consuming it on a desktop, on a large screen, or even on a tablet or a mobile device. You want your user to have a good experience with your page. That means that a screen designed for a large screen might not be readable on a small device. That means that a screen that is designed for a cell phone might be visually messy or too large to see correctly on a regular web browser. So what do? We do responsive design. We create a design that adapts itself to different sizes. And a simple implementation of responsive design is fluid design. Fluid design is simply declaring items that are going to have different relative size to each other, depending on the screen on which they are. So if you look at my example, this is not an actual screen, that's just an abstract example. You can see that I have a menu composed of 3 objects. I have a menu item on the left, I have a menu item on the center, and I have a menu item on the right. If I am on a desktop browser, this is fine. This is fitting on my screen. I can have my logo on the left, my login button on the right, and a big banner in the middle, and that's going to look nice, no issue. But if I move to a cell phone, this is going to be difficult to fit in a single portrait mode cell phone width. In which case, we want those elements to automatically change arrangement compared to each other instead of being shown left to right with 1/4, 1/2, 1/4. We're going to want each of those elements to consume all of the horizontal space and to be displayed above each other. That is simple responsive design. Now, responsive design is like every design is something you have to put in your page. But the useful thing with the grid system that we're going to talk about now is you have immediate support simply by declaring CSS classes. So if you look at my menu items and you look at my code sample on the left here, you're going to see that I have a number of things. I have a container. The container is the main square around all of my elements. I have a row. The row is a sub-container. If you have multiple division in your container, you can have multiple rows. And then I have my menu items. And my menu items are receiving some additional CSS classes. In this case, we're on ZK objects. So you will be familiar already with the fact that to declare a CSS class on a ZK object, you put it into the S class attribute. And it's located right here. So on my object here, on both of them, I have the same 2 classes. I have column medium 6 and column extra small 12. What does that mean? That means that when I am looking at my columns in a medium or larger screen, I will apply the rule 6. And the rule 6 means that out of the 12 columns that compose a regular Bootstrap grid, each of my elements are going to consume 6 of those columns. So if you look at my example here, this menu item 2 is consuming 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns in medium screens and is consuming 12 columns once it is on a smaller screen. This is what you would achieve simply by adding those 2 classes to your element. Now, how would that look into an actual page? So I'm going to go and show you a little bit of a full page that is created with those principles. You'll see here that I have a little bit more classes declared on those objects because I'm going to also show you the utility classes later. So I have here in my first row, I have my menu item 1, I have my menu item 2, and then I have another row here with my menu item 3. So in my first container have those two objects with the same declaration I just showed you. I have column medium 6, use half of the screen available to you on size 6, and column extra small 12 on extra small, which is to say any size below medium. I'm going to use all of the available screen space. What does that look like in practice? So don't worry about the colors. There's a reason I choose those colors. I'm going to come to that when we go to the color section later. This look like this. Here we're on the medium screen. You can see my menu item 1 of all of my column is using 6 of them. My menu item 2 of all my columns is using 6 of them. 6 and 6 make 12, the entirety of the screen. But if the screen becomes smaller, when we reach below the medium screen size, which should be here, you can see that my menu item 1 and my menu item 2 now switch to consuming 12 column, which is to say all of the container. And just by adding all of those properties to your different page element, you can easily create those responsive designs that will remain readable and remain easy to use on every different sizes of device that your user might bring to the table. Okay, the actual design, we're going to go to the admin template at the end to show you what a skilled designer that is not just trying to make a point for a demo can do with those. It looks much better than just my random colors. Don't worry about it. We're getting there at the end. Let's go back to the presentation so I can show you the rest. This is the example I'm going to show you at the end. That's the admin template. That's an actual design made with exactly the same principle. You have here your columns. In this case, because we're dividing a space in 4, 12 divided by 4 is 3. So all of those have MD3, small 6, because half of the screen is used on each on 6. And then when they are 1 by 1, extra small 12 when you get at extra small size. And that's exactly the same principle, just use on a more beautiful page. I'm going to show you that demo at the end. I'm just going over the rest for now. So what's the rest? The rest, once we've talked about the responsive layouts, is the utility classes. And there is a lot of utility classes. First, to show you those utility classes, I'm going to simply go to the Bootstrap 5 utility classes pages, so I can give you a quick rundown of what they are. And I've not listed them in the presentation simply because the Bootstrap page already lists them, have clear example, and it would just be a waste of time to not send you to the source. Since we're using Bootstrap, if you have any question about how to use it, your main to-go tool should be the Bootstrap documentation. So the utility classes. And by the way, if you have question about the grid details are also located in that documentation. The link will be into the presentation at the end. Okay, so we have background classes. And now you're going to ask, they choose some nice colors for the background primary, the background success. Why is it that your page look like this? And that's a fair question, because I'm trying to demonstrate something here. I'm trying to demonstrate that the color support and the rest of the utility support for the Bootstrap utilities can be used with Bootstrap theme support. And that's important because without loading the entire Bootstrap dependency, you can easily switch the colors on the page by replacing a sample theme with a different CSS file that contain a different theme. So in this case, I was using this theme file, the zkadmin Bootstrap theme, which is the color layout used for the demo page I'm going to show you at the end. I can replace it by a different palette, by the sample theme. The sample theme is the color selection that is used in the Bootstrap documentation. And then when I reload my page, you can see that now I'm rendering this using the colors provided in the sample page. So first, good benefit of using the color utility class, you have access to an easy palette system. You can just set all of your variables or build your palette from the online builder for the palette, import that into your project, and now you have a light theme, a dark theme, a red theme, a brown theme, a yellow theme, a pink theme, every theme you want to include into your project simply by just switching a CSS file. All right. So what else? We have the background borders and colors. I'm putting all of those in the same boat because the background is going to let you set a BG primary, a BG secondary, a BG success onto an element and automatically apply the background color to that element. The borders is going to do the same thing, but with border color. So border with border primary is going to give you a blue border. Border with border secondary is going to give you a gray border, and so on and so on. And then if you've paid attention, you have a basic idea of what doing text primary, text secondary, etc. is going to do. It's all the same colors. It's your palette of color, easily applicable to your elements. So if we go back and look at the code I was just showing you a second ago, on my nav item here, you can see that we have a primary background, so that's blue background, a text success, which we're going to remove because it's a bit hard to read, in my opinion, and we're going to replace it by a different text. So we're going to try and put a text light instead, which is the light color class for the text, the font of the text. And then the rest here is going to be rounded corners, which is another utility we're going to go into. And that's about all we need to put on that one. And now that I've modified it by reloading my page, you see that I've changed to a light text. This is now much more nice on the eye. And this is so nice, actually. I'm going to put the light text class also on my next element. And now it's much more readable. And by mixing and matching all of those, you will see that if I make the change back to the other theme I was using, all of those design choices still apply. I don't need to redesign the page every time. As long as I stay into that primary text, border arrangement of colors and shapes into my page layout, my page design, those are going to work with any palette that I put into the input, as long as the palette is well constructed. That's a matter of constructing the palette, not a matter of designing the page. All right, so we've talked about the color-based API. What else do we have? We have display. Display is simply letting you change the display properties of an element directly into CSS without having to write the display block. It's mix and match, so it's functional with the grid responsive system. You can put it in that way. So using hiding an element on any on a specific size, for example, will let you put dnon, which is the display none class, which is going to hide that element on all sizes. And then you can set it to display block to set it back to visible on the sizes that you want. How would that look in the page? So if you look here, I have here the dnon class on my bottom container, and I have the d small block class on my bottom container. The dnon class means this object should be display none. And the d small block class means on size small or higher, that object should be display block. What does that look like in the actual page? I'm now on size small. If I go smaller than size small, I'm now on size extra small. On size extra small, you can see in the code right here. On size extra small, I have display none. So my bottom objects are not visible. But if I move to size small or higher, I will now display that object. So what's the application of that? Let's say you have some objects that you want to show, but only if the page is big enough. You have a big 3D visualization where the user can click and drag. That's going to work very well on a desktop computer or on a tablet, but on a cell phone, it's going to be impossible to use. You can be setting it to display none on smaller sizes. It's not going to be in the page layout at that point, and you can be setting it back to display block or inline or whatever is relevant to you when you go to larger sizes. So, and you don't need to add any code to do that. That's just CSS classes being put on your objects. All right. What else can we talk about? Flex, I've not any sample of flexing in this simple page because that was not fitting in the layout, but there is flexing sample into the admin panel, which I'm going to link to you at the end. If you're interested in CSS Flex, it's a great way to arrange elements, to have them either stack on the side or shrink or enlarge themselves to occupy a given set of space. I recommend that you look into it if you want to do that kind of nice responsive design on several sizes. Float, likewise, is letting you set the position of an element on the viewport. Interaction is interesting. Interaction will let you choose how the mouse will interact with text. So if you look at the sample here that they provide, this paragraph has the default selection behavior. I'm going to do a simple click, not a double click, but a simple click on the top paragraph. And you can see that it selects the entire text at once. And whatever I do on the bottom here, I don't know if you hear my mouse, but I'm doing a lot of clicks. The last paragraph is not selectable at all. And that's by setting the user select all, select auto, or select none attribute on your elements. And likewise, in my demonstration screen, you'll see that in my first sample here, my menu item 1, 2, and 3 are user select all. And then my items at the bottom are user select none. So if I go into my sample page and try to just click, not select, but do a single click on my menu item 1, 2, 3, they are going to have their content selected automatically. If I attempt to select something in the bottom container, which I put at user select none, you can see that nothing is happening when I click. All right. There's still a few other interesting utility. I'm not going to make demonstration for all of them simply because for some of them, I can't make a better demonstration than the one on the website. Overflow, an easy way to set overflow on your containers. Position, an easy way to set the position static, relative, absolute on your elements. Shadows are going to let you put some visual flair by adding box shadows under your elements. I've put some onto my top and bottom container here. So if you look at my demonstration screen, you see that the rest of my page has a drop shadow and that my containers appear to be floating over the page. And again, that's a single CSS class added to the relevant objects. You're going to have your sizing control. If you want to restrict the size of an object to a percent width of the parent, for example, or to a percent height of the parent. If you want to use viewport units, you have that support as well. Spacing, very, very useful. You can put margins, you can put paddings onto your elements easily. You'll see here that I've got padding 3 and margin bottom 5 on all my elements, which gives them this spacing and this size for each of them by default. If I want larger element, I can add extra padding. So I can put padding 5 instead of padding 3. If I want fewer spacing, I can put fewer margin bottom on some of my elements. I think you should have a good idea, bigger elements, smaller spacing on them. Excuse me, I will need to take a very short. Okay, tissue break so that I can finish that presentation without choking. All right, there we go. Larger elements, smaller paddings. If you want to keep the same element size, but you still want the smaller paddings, again, you just change the value. All of that is configurable through your CSS classes in order to just adjust all of those variables without having to go directly into setters, getters, or all of that things. And since this is in view directly, in my opinion, this is a great fit for MVVM because in MVVM, you want to really separate your Java logic from your Zool to have your view on one side, your logic, your view model on the other side, and never the two shall meet. This is a great way to add some flair onto an MVVM project without having to go and do all of the control by hand. Okay, so what else have we not talked about? Text control is going to let you change the size and the alignment of text. Vertical align is going to let you align the content of the elements inside of their parent container. And visibility is a simple visible, invisible toggle to put the visibility toggle on and off. That's the one I would not really recommend using in ZK. Everything else is fine, but visibility toggle, because ZK does quite a lot of check of visibility, that one I would suggest you do with the visible attribute directly on your components. Okay, so with all of that said, what does it look like when someone with a little bit more design ability than just a simple page for a presentation puts all of that together? I'm going to show you the admin template project. The admin template project is a project that we created for ZK8. So you can see that this is design principles that age very well, where we took a designer theme and turned it into a ZK project supported by Bootstrap. That admin template at the current time uses the Bootstrap helper to load its Bootstrap elements and to wire them to the page. So here, this is the intent. It's a page that uses the grid system. The grid system is going to be very visible for you. If I resize the page, you can see that when I go from a large to a medium-sized screen, some of my objects have some important changes. You can see my customer order and task vignette at the top go from using 1/4 of the grid to using 1/2 of the grid for each vignette. You can see that they then go from 1/2 to all of the grid for each vignette when I go to a small screen or below. Same goes from my report here and my product sales. My report is going to go into a sequence with my product sale. Same for my other page elements. You'll be able to change here on the left your ZK object from a full-size object to a collapse object. This one not by Bootstrap, but by using ZK responsiveness. There is a lot of responsive design principle and techniques using that demo. So if you're interested in a good case study on how to make a nice responsive app in ZK, that's the one I would really suggest. Now, you can just download the sample project, run it on your side, read the article. There is an article associated with it as well. And you have all the basis you need. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. I've talked about the colors and background, the other utility classes. I've put a link to the utility classes demonstration in Bootstrap right here. I really recommend that you take advantage of the Bootstrap documentation or simply go to a Bootstrap tutorial for that purpose, because you will learn much more than in simply me telling you about what all of those things are. And now we're at the end. There's still a few things. First, there is further reading. This is responsiveness and Bootstrap use in ZK is actually a very interesting topic. We have the Bootstrap helper smalltalk if you want to have a quick and easy rundown of everything I've told you about today. The responsive design article in our dev ref, which gives you a rundown on the main principle of responsive design in ZK. The admin template, Bootstrap integration, that's the last project I've shown you. You can go and read this article or simply go to the demo project and run it directly on your side. And lastly, you have the Bootstrap helper config demo. That's the code I've been showing you during the day, during the talk today. There is not much in it, to be entirely honest with you. It's just how to configure your POM file, your ZK XML, and how to use it in the page. Okay, you'll have access to all of those. We have 2 slides left. Q&A, we're going to come to that. And while we do the Q&A, I'd like to show a quick survey because we're interested in your opinion about Bootstrap in ZK, about whether or not you think that's interesting for you, whether you use ZK with Bootstrap already or not. So if you would like to share your opinion or your use case with us, I've just started a survey. Feel free to join in, have a look, and let us know what your usage for that would be. Okay, Q&A. Now's a good time. If you have any question, any comments, please go ahead. Let us know. Let me know, and I'll try and give you the answer if I can. It's currently 45 on my end. I'll keep the session open for, I think, 5 minutes until 50. So if you have questions, put them in. Go ahead. If you don't have question and you've completed the survey, I'm just going to say thanks for coming and sticking with me until the end of the presentation. I hope that was interesting, that you learned something. And if you already are a Bootstrap master, I hope it was at least entertaining to see me run down the different features that you might be already aware of and interested in using in your pages. All right. See, we've got some answers on the survey. That's nice. Thanks to everyone who's participating. We do appreciate the feedback. That's very useful to us to know what you're interested in and to work to make those products more accessible and more useful. All right, as I said, Currently, I'm not seeing any question. I'm going to keep the call for another 3 minutes open. If you have any question, put them in. I'll take a look. If not, as I said, thanks a lot for coming. Appreciate having you with me today, and happy to have you here. See you next time.